All right. All right, doing some quick checks. Everything's up. Got my outline in front of myself. I think we're ready to go. Welcome back, guys. I think we're doing a follow up of the depression talk that we had about like 2 weeks ago. Some of it was to discuss like some points that we weren't able to hit on the first one, because I think part of the completeness that I'm looking for with this topic is revolved around various dimensions of how to view different situations, in different in different dimensions of experiences of people going through depression in general. So I'd rather be thorough here than to have some points left unanswered. So I think this coming back around to it is uh, hopefully to take care of that. There was a resource that I left in the stage announcement section. That actually it was a video of a lecture from some guy who goes over like how to recover from depression, and I thought it was very spot on. Some unrelated stuff. This is a new mic. Um, Thank you, HyperX Quadcast. I don't know how well I sound. I think I sound pretty all right. Um, in comparison to like the other microphone that I was using before. So the problem with the other microphones is that I had to swap it out every time like I shocked it. So I build up like a lot of static shock because I like wrap myself in a blanket, and then when I go to touch my computer, I end up like shocking something there. Everything is pretty durable except for the past microphone. So this new microphone hopefully won't die right away. And on top of that, I also have warranty on it on this one. The other one was like a $50 microphone that got me by pretty well. It just, you know, every time that I got to my computer, there was the risk of shocking it to oblivion. So yeah, hopefully this change will be a bit better. In terms of like my own life, I think I'm doing pretty well. I'm going into my finals week for the winter quarter. I'm about to start up like my last quarter for the undergraduate degree. So I think I might be ridding myself of some unnecessary responsibilities in order to finish out the quarter strong, or the last one strong. This last one was this winter quarter was pretty rough for me in terms of balancing some different responsibilities. So I'd rather just clear up a bunch of stuff so I can perform my best for the very last one. I'd like the last quarter that I have is with a bunch of courses that are actually pretty interesting. So capstone included. So I definitely want to spend time doing that. Anyhow, let's get to why we were here today. So, um, regrettably, I didn't rewatch or re-listen to the podcast that we had during the first one, um, and so suppose what I left out from the other from like the initial outline may not all be accurate, but I figure if we revisit some of them, it won't be too bad. I think that'll provide clarity for at least my side. I think there was some communication gaps or understanding my point of view, and I'm pretty sure I did this for Alon too. But um, I think we were having gaps between what idea I was trying to present and the idea that he got from what I was saying. So I think I might need to clear up some of my own perceptions or the way that I communicated um, my experiences and my ideas. Okay, so the first bullet point is on topic of depression. What can you do to prevent it if you see it happening in yourself? And I think everyone has like different different ways of leading up to what depression is. And one thing that was in the video that I had linked into the, you know what, I'll probably just link it into this description as well. But there was some video out there that of the lecture. It said that like depression is the cause of like multiple stimuli going in like the wrong direction. And so when people talk about depression, sometimes they like credit a specific instance that happened in their life, which is the main reason for why they have depression. Whereas the theory presented was it's actually a collection of like traumatizing events or just like different experiences that led up to this depression like mindset. And so, in terms of how do you prevent it, I think there's a lot of dimensions where you need to keep control over to prevent them from going like across the threshold. So, in terms of responsibilities, you need to make sure you have a good grasp of as many as you can and over a wide range. Yeah, just over a wide range, not as many as you can. So, I think what you can control is all you can be focusing on. And even though like some events can trigger like a very depressing mindset after that, I think one event can also affect how you experience life further on. And that will, and those collection experiences of like negativity as you're experiencing life after that event could definitely lead you to the depressing mindset. Or yeah. So instead of the event itself actually causing the depression, it's the like that and everything after that event could be what brings forth the negativity. So for myself, I guess like a personal antidote about what I do, I think I end up like taking on too many responsibilities, and then at some point in time I just don't want to deal with them anymore. And so what I do is I like put stuff off, and I justify that what I'm putting off is all right because I need like this stress reliever to be away from the different responsibilities at the time. And what that ends up doing is that like feeds into the depression of, oh, I should have been doing this on time. But the reality of the what was like expected of me wasn't realistic. And so I think that's another point that was talked about in the lecture, which is balancing out like it's not balancing out, but knowing what's expected of you and how to make that like a realistic expectation. Because there's different viewpoints of yourself of how to conduct your behavior and what you should be living up to. And not all the time is that realistic. And so when you hold like toxic expectations towards yourself, I think that's also a lead up to the negative view that you could have nearing depression. Signs of depression you can identify in other people. I think if people start becoming distant, that's like a clue. But that's not to say that like everyone shows depression in that way, nor is that even true. Like some people are distant because they are distant. I mean, I'd like to think that I'm somewhat distant, I suppose. Like I want to be in arm's reach for, well, not like arm's reach, but because I don't actually like value physical touch that much, but I'd like to at least be within like ear's reach for most people. It's like you can chat with me and I can chat back. Doesn't really matter where we do it. I'm fine with wherever or whenever. But yeah, not everyone like isolates themselves, even though with depression that's usually what happens. It's that you end up like thinking you're just in your thoughts all the time. So making sure that you check up like everyone on your network, even like in a group setting or even in a privatized setting. I think that's how you I think you get an understanding of like the differences in character, perhaps like a lack of confidence, lack of you feel like a lack of meaning in someone else's existence. Some people actually hide their behaviors pretty well. Maybe I did. I don't know if I did. Probably not. At some point in time, there was a threshold where it was like, it was pretty obvious that that I was struggling over there, or struggling dealing with mine. So, is what it is. But yeah, I guess everyone like copes with the experience differently because they have different experiences to be depressed over. So I think that collection of experiences that led them to the negativity also means that the coping mechanisms to deal with those stressors are equally different between individuals. So, what's the best way to help other people? Like, how do you help someone else? And from the list, I have like a friend, a coworker, family member, or a stranger, pretty much different scenarios as to where you see like someone else struggling with depression in those different contexts. As a friend, I think I mean, honestly, each of these could be answered with like however you want to value that relationship with the other person is how you want to engage with the topic itself. um I think there's a big misconception about how to help other people though. And so when I talk about like my own experiences with depression and what was the best way for someone else to help me, at the time I was pretty much in this loophole of anyone who offers me like professional help is or like suggests that I go see a professional don't actually know the situation that I'm in. And I don't think like a professional would be like more isolating of a suggestion than someone else like actually trying to listen. And so when people would make that suggestion, it seems more of like a getaway like solution for them. Like I know I can't help you, um, and there's like a professional out there who can do it. But it almost seemed like they were giving up on me, as if like they didn't feel capable enough to do like the bare minimum of listening. Whereas I think for most of mine, like I didn't feel like I was being listened to, and it's not that maybe it's not that like I didn't feel like I was being listened to, but no one would listen to me. And if I was paying someone to listen to me, then that'd just be fake. So it just ended up being like this whole loophole of no one wants to no one wants to chat and no one wants to listen for like the my own unique character. So, and whether that was like objectively true or not is definitely false. I had people like that out there who were willing to listen to what I had to say. Like if I really asked them to, I just didn't see that as a gateway to getting that attention. So in terms of like the best way to actually help someone, I think you need to listen in first as to what they're dealing with. I think a lot of the bundled up thoughts and the negativity just ends up perpetuating itself as like a prominent force in how this person sees the world. And I think part of the problem of it getting to that spot is no one listened. And no one had like valid feedback to give. And so like a main reason why I think people talk about depression wrong is because everyone talks about like their journey through it all, but nobody like discusses some like individual behaviors that they perhaps go through. And those individual behaviors, if you talk about them collectively, I think that could help others. That's like the best way for other people to be able to help someone go through like, or to help someone go through depression. And there's just, I think in the lecture as well, the guy talked about like depression being a social problem more so is like a biological problem, and that's more so meaning that like the social environment around them convinced them of to where like the negative mindset that they have today. So I think by giving them different instances of what this social environment is around them, I think you'll be able to make some drastic changes to that other person. And so instead of like writing off like you need like antidepressant medication, which doesn't sound good to anyone, like I don't know someone, I don't know anyone who, well, I mean, I don't know a lot of people anyways, but like I can't imagine someone being like antidepressant pills are like the silver bullet for all my problems. It's like, no, it's not. I think in the lecture they also talk about this too, but it's more of a numbing effect than it is like a solution. The numbing effect is useful for when people feel so poorly about their lives that they do something, or like they can't properly function anymore. And generally speaking, they can't function already, but we're talking like such a sufferable amount that I don't know, they're pretty much just like in their bed all the time, and they can't really do anything, and they can't even eat. Like everything becomes a chore. So I think like the antidepressant method is more of like a stabilizing solution than it is like a optimal solution. And for me, I think when I was taking antidepressants, like the reason why I just stopped taking them after some point. Like I was doing fine for like a couple months, and I just stopped taking it because I not only wasn't I able to feel like any suffering, I just couldn't feel at all. So it was super numbing, and at some point I was just like, get over yourself. And so I did that. And got rid of like the depression and what, or sorry, got rid of like the antidepressants. I think part of the part of the situation was just like, I can't feel anything, and this is painful. It's painful to not be able to feel anything. I'd rather feel something. And so, I went back to dealing with the suffering instead, and I thought that was worth it. Because it made me realize like things could be worse, so let's try and make things better from like the past situation. And so like the problem of not being able to feel anything was completely out of my control. I think I made some realization that like the negative feelings that I was having off of the antidepressants could be fixed. It was like at least changeable by my own perception, whereas like the numbness feeling was just, you know, I had nothing to do. I had nothing, no control over that other than like taking the pills or the medication to make it happen. So but have I been able to help a friend before? What's the best way to do that? The best, I don't know, from my previous suggestion about being like a good listener to them. I think that's the I think the way that I've helped friends has been in the same way. I think as you listen to other people and their experiences, they're able to make meaning out of understanding that someone else understands what they're going through. And I think that's pretty interesting because someone just voiced to me the other day how eye opening it is and how binding it is to other beings that that you can understand, like, suffering from. It's like inspiring that people are able to have such empathy and sympathy for each other. It's like humbling. It's like, I may be dealing with all these problems, but at least someone else can understand what I'm going through. Like, my situation isn't as isolating as I thought it was. And I think that's like the main point when you're engaging with others who are going through the experience. But the person who's going through it needs to, like, fully understand that someone else understands the situation. And I think part of my problem as I was going through it, I was in such disbelief that someone else could understand my situation, and rightfully so. I think everyone needs to make the decision for themselves if someone else has that connecting piece to your own story. It's like everyone talks about, like, depression, but and, like, mental health, whatnot. These are all buzzwords that I feel like are being thrown around daily, in today's modern social exchanges, but nobody addresses some of the problems out there of certain individuals who also experience the same thing, but also feel isolated from others who are experiencing it, because not only is their collection of experiences different from everyone else, so they honestly have evidence for why they should feel isolated or special from other people, but I don't know, the conversation itself just isn't helpful for them, because why would they be willing to listen if nobody else understands what they went through? And nobody can understand what they went through. Nobody has and I think if you have, like, a bad network of people who haven't given, it's not that they have a bad network, but they haven't given their network the actual chance to listen to the story that you have. I think you won't ever get that social connection piece that will help you get out of the negative thoughts. Anyhow, with a coworker and a family member, I guess that with a coworker, I don't see that too much different from as, like, a friend, but you could definitely see someone else going through that situation, and, try your best to be, like, a good listener. With a family member, I guess I wouldn't know. I really wouldn't know. I think family is probably, like, when I think of family, I think of people who like extended family, but say, like, one of my primary family members, like, went through it, how would I handle that? I mean, I still think listening's, like, the key important thing there, but I think your ability to bond over something probably increases the more you're with them. So I think a family member is probably one of the stronger gateways to having influence over someone else. And with a stranger, it's like you do the best you can. If someone's willing to open up about, like, themselves being depressed, it's pretty intimate in terms of stuff to talk about. Seemingly inappropriate, but I've definitely had it happen. Anyways, when do you help other people? Some people are very easy and they just come to ask for help because they know when to ask for help. And then there's other people who don't know how to ask for help. And how do you look out for those people? Well, I guess as said before, with how people cope with the negative thoughts, I guess you'd have to analyze their behaviors enough to understand whether or not they're in a good place or not. And from there, you make your approach. I think you got to pick up on like different signs as to how they're feeling. And I guess different negative behaviors that come about at every point, like in real time. So I think those are just judgments of your own. How do you know when people are hiding their signs? I guess if someone's distant, it'd be hard to tell, but I think you should generally utilize every opportunity to understand how someone else is behaving if you really want to have that kind of influence over them. When does hiding become noticeable? Sometimes it doesn't. And I think that's the sad reality for some people. Sometimes you just don't get the opportunity to really notice it. And I think the worst happens when someone's able to act that well. You'd like to think people have the ability to. Honestly, I think I'm a case of that too. I don't know if my. It's not that my signs were always hidden. I just don't think people connected the pieces in the way that they needed to save me. Because I think I could have been dead when I went through like my suicide attempt. But something in me just like believed in humanity again. While I was, you know, when it came down to the moment, I like had faith that, what I was doing would have been wrong to the people that I could potentially be harming. Not like anyone in my network either. It was just some like when I tried mine, I was like rage driving one night. And this was like back in Arizona, so they were just flat roads, straight roads. You pretty much sped up, whatever. Quite a bit of lights where I was around, so I just thought about like closing my eyes and just flooring it. And then some part of me just realized it was, what if I hit like a parent and a child? Say if like I was driving out there and I hit another car that had that situation in it, would I be able to like die with myself knowing that I caused that harm for someone else? And the question that or the answer to that was no, I couldn't. So that was the end of the at that point that was the end of the suicide attempt, which was quite interesting. But up to that point, I made it that far. And say I still like say if that situation didn't like pop into my head, And perhaps I like used other means to like give it a try, you know. Would I would I still have done it? Probably. I don't think anyone had any idea that that's where it was getting to. I didn't ask for help from anyone. I was like lying to my parents all the time, though I'm sure they had like some understanding of how that was going. But I think I was able to hide it pretty well. So, in terms of like the actual question of when does hiding become noticeable, I don't think it does if no one has any idea. If no one is suspecting of what's happening, I think someone could get away with a lot, and I know people have, which is pretty sad. So, I think the best way for me to interact with other people now is to always treat like mental health could always be in the gutter at any point in time. I think your constant checkups with other people is the social responsibility that you have as someone within your network. And so when you look out for other people, that needs to be at the it's not the forefront of your mind, but it should always be on your mind. So I think you engaging with everyone in your network is the responsibility you should have for the people that are close to you. All right, so this was something that came up in the last one, and it was like the misconceptions of the recovery process. I can't remember how much we went over with that, but so like the daily conversation now is, well, it's not like the daily conversation, but it's a more acceptable talking point, which is to like talk about like your recovery and um, what depression is to them. And so I think people talk about it pretty shallowly because I don't think people understand what is helpful to say in those situations. And the reason why it needs to have some helpful element to it is because when people shallowly talk about self improvement and mental health, it's almost alienating when everyone has like their own individual, when everyone's individual like depression is, or everyone's depression is like individualized. You can't just say like generalized binding crap about your experience and expect it to be, relatable. And I think people need to talk about this in a way where others can be inspired to like take care of the challenge in their own way like they should. I just don't think people can have been inspired from when people talk about that. So, like some misconceptions is like I think the way people understand how their own recovery process goes is like a very shallow way of doing it. So, what therapy really does is it ends up like teaching you how to be self-reflective. And so part of the recovery process needs to be like displayed accurately when people discuss about it. And so talking about the minor details about like the frame of mind changes and perhaps encompassing a broader audience when you're talking to people about like the when you're trying to raise awareness about the topic. Try to make it like it's not that you need to make it generic, or rather, I don't know, like the generic part is necessary in order to broaden your how people can connect over the same experience. I just think people talk about it generically and accurately. I don't actually know how to word that. I guess I would need a specific instance of how people like talk about it, and then make some judgments over how, or yeah, over how that went. So I guess for now I'll just put that down, and maybe we'll talk about it in some time else. And why is hearing the right recovery process important? Because I think I think if someone is able to describe how the process usually goes, or how the process goes, that is also encompassing of how, like, when someone is self-reflecting over their own situation, which they should be when they're like depressed as well, they need to be able to listen to someone else with the open mind that what they're saying could be applicable to their own life. And so I think when people talk about their experiences, maybe sometimes a little too specifically about how their specific experience got handled, I think if you're able to, I think you lose a lot of the connection opportunity by talking about your specific instances, um, without having some realization of how to bind it together generically. And so that's why I think the general discussion, or the general, like, talking about your instance in a generic sense, enables you to have a bonding opportunity with other people. And the bonding opportunity is how to inspire other people, or when other people can feel alignment through the experience you went through, and the experience that they're going through is a opportunity to have inspiration, or to provide inspiration for someone else. And I think that's necessary for someone to feel hopeful for the future. And that's honestly, that's really what like depression is. So if you can convince someone that they should be hopeful for getting over their own instance of depression and overcoming their obstacles with mental health, then I think you've done your job in the right way. Otherwise, I think people talk about it like too specifically. Yeah, I've definitely done a flip flop on on my perception of how people talk about that. But yeah, people talk about their instances too specifically for it to be helpful to other people, because it isn't inspiring from my understanding of it, because it can't be applicable. When people talk about recovery, what are the commonalities and differences? I mean, I think this goes back to what the general recovery process should look like. And it's like rearranging, or it's not rearrange, it's like rewriting your own personal experiences to that to be more humbling. It's like a more humble approach to how you should view things out of your control. And also having like a better expectations about yourself, having like a better dynamic with how you view your character. It's like you should be able to forgive yourself over like past events. Like, the Spencer, you know, I would judge myself for eating burgers every day. Like 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. It's like, yeah, shame on you, Spencer, but you know what? That's how you wanted to live life. And even though today Spencer, who focuses heavily on like weight currently, as much as I'd like want to like raise my fist up to you out of anger for doing that to yourself, or doing that to me, you know, just laugh it off. What I needed to do back then was what I needed to do. And I'm at peace with that, which is why I don't, ever think about that judgment anymore. What if people don't align with others and who struggle with depression? So this was like me, super loopholey. It's like, this other person can understand. And so I think a means to having other people understand those to actually listen to you. but also have a meaningful way to respond back to in a way that you can understand. Any advice on how to help other people? Be authentic. Because there are some people out there who can usually understand when someone's being fake. Like, I was trying to help someone who was going through like a really hard time. Yeah, he had gone through like a lot of traumatizing events. He was like a part of the US military and he lived in Texas. So we were having a conversation one night because he really needed help. He wanted like some companionship. So, we had like a 3-4 hour long like chat. Played some games in between. But yeah, the way he worded it, or like at least my experience going into it, wasn't perfect. Like, I was completely timid, not sure what to do. This could have been some guy who, you know, I mean, I had no idea of like the kind of condition he was in. He could have been like on the verge of like a gun to his head, for all I knew, on the other side of the call. But what I tried to do is tried to be like politically correct is not the word here, but I tried to be like as safe as I could with the interaction, because I didn't want to be responsible for anything he said, like, or for anything he did on the other end of the call. But I also wanted to be like as helpful as I could, so that was the best way that, like, a fake persona that was trying to help, like, it's not a fake, it was more safe, like a safe dialogue to help the other person. But he found out right away. He was like, no, I know what you're doing and I don't like it. It's not helpful to me. And so I asked him questions on what would be helpful to him, and he gave me like answers right away. And one of the things he said was, be authentic, be yourself, listen, please. And so I guess I've taken that to heart. And I tried my best to be like as myself as possible, even with the stressor of understanding that, on the other side of the call he could have a gun to his head, or pointed a gun at his own head. So, I mean, in the end, it turned out okay. It was just, what he really needed was someone to be able to listen to what he had to say, and all the different negative experiences that he had gone through. So in the end, I think it ended up working, and I guess that's my suggestion to give to other people. It's like, be as understanding as you can be, and be yourself with how you respond with someone else. Be genuinely interested. Any advice on how to be helped? Okay, so if you're like me, who didn't want help this whole time, I think the best way to prevent this situation from happening, to where it's not a case of whether or not you can be helped, it's that you're always being helped all the time. So there's no opportunity for you to expose yourself to be helped. People are constantly helping you anyways. So I think if you keep people close, I think they'll be able to make judgments for you for when or not you need help. But if you don't have anyone close and you need to make that judgment for yourself, and if you're like me, who doesn't want to ask for help, I think you're in trouble. But some part of you needs to make some like realistic understanding that, holy shit, I'm in the gutter right now. And you need to humble yourself back to the understanding that you're human too, and then you also need some individualized attention and help. So yeah. Okay. You know what? I'm all right with how that went. And I think I'm going to call it there. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you guys in about 2 weeks. Not sure what the next topic will be, but I'll have something generated for then. Anyhow, see you guys later.